the more steroids you took, we used to go to work and go in the club, go to toilets, we'd be jacking up halfway through the night. We was taking so much, you know what I mean? It's mental.
Whether I really attracted trouble or it attracted me, I'm not sure. Either way, there was no avoiding it. I was out with two of my boys, Gaffer and Fearless. We'd been to Legends in the West End and on to the EUC1 club when we ran into a team known as the Rat Boys. I was suited and booted, been having a social evening out chatting to a few doorman mates, so I wasn't looking for bother. I was ready to turn my back when trouble flared, but Gaffer jumped in and made himself double busy like he usually did. I shouted at him, "Get back here, they've got good doormen of their own. Stay out of it. Don't having to go at us, so keep your nose out of it." But the atmosphere had got nasty. Several people came over and asked if they could stand by us because they were frightened. Although I was in the muscle game, I'd always had an ability to keep calm and make people feel safe. About 20 or 30 people were standing next to me. Next thing, 2 shots rang out. One bloke had been hit. The Rat Boys had gone away and had tooled themselves up with guns and they'd come back looking to sort out the geezers they'd had the barney with. I thought, oh no, not again. Mr. Whale had been right. I seemed to attract trouble. Another bloke had got shot. People were screaming. The police sirens were heading our way. This time I stood there, cool as a cucumber, and said to Gaffer and Fearless, "Okay boys, time to go home. We're in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is not our fight." With that we calmly walked out through the door, left the fracas in our wake. This time Captain Sensible was talking in my ear, and we drove off and had a Chinese meal with no risk to any more of my 9 lives. Gaffer said, "How can you be so cool?" I told him it was an instinct, a front in which the screen that comes over me, and I can be in control in dangerous situations, most of the time anyway. People respect you for it. But I knew it was my own survival as much as anything. I'd had too many friends die, and the last couple of years had taught me lessons. My good pal Black Francis had got shot outside the Frog and Nightgown in the old Kent Road. Big Ron had been shot on his doorstep. Then Tony and the boys had been wiped out in the Retterdon murders. There'd been too much grief, even in my dangerous world. I've been with people in clubs and seen everybody get edgy. It was like something really big was about to go off. Everybody seemed to be carrying a gun. It didn't frighten me, but I knew someday somebody was going to come looking for my scalp. I was a bit of a name around the muscle scene, and I was always going to be a target for some up-and-coming young bruiser who wanted to take me on because of who I was, not because of anything I'd done. Sooner or later it was coming. And I was becoming distrustful of my own friends. Things were going on for money behind my back. I wasn't sure of the people around me anymore. I was becoming lonely in a crowd. I was feeling weakened, and I thought now was the time to get out. But could I really ever escape? I've been around the club scene for more than 10 years. I'd witnessed a lot of villains, a lot of violence, monstrous, shocking acts of brutality. I'd always carried a big knife. I regarded it as one of the tools of the trade, and I'd never been afraid to use it. Now guns were everywhere, not knives. An old pal from West London, a bit of a face from his own manor, came up to me one night in a club just as I started going out with my current girlfriend Kelly and asked how I was. Then he dropped his voice and said, "Have got anything on you?" I knew what he meant, any weapon. I said, No, I'm okay. Then he pulled out a 38 from under his shirt and said, "Do you want this?" No, I fucking didn't. And I didn't want this prick offering me guns in front of my girlfriend. I'd got my teenage daughter Carly there too, and some family friends. He insisted, "Take it, mate. Bit of protection." No thanks, pal. I'd seen too much damage done. But then I thought, hold on, had this geezer heard something I didn't know about? Does he think I need protection? He's not part of my normal crowd, but he seems to be picking up bad vibes involving me. What's going on, I told him. I'm alright. I don't need protection. But the doubt was there. I knew something sinister was in the air. What had it all come to now? Geezers trying to flog me a shooter whilst I was out with my family. Things weren't right. If you live in a world of criminals, there are only 2 places you're likely to end up, in prison or in the graveyard, and I didn't fancy either. I knew that from the moment I put a gun in my pocket, and I'm not saying guns hadn't been in my possession a few times, I had to be prepared to use it. Guns aren't for show. They're the most powerful and destructive weapon you can have, and too many hotheads were touting them around. It would be easy to get into a silly argument with somebody drugged up or drunk. He's carrying, and he's pulled it out. Deep down he doesn't want to shoot you, but now he's the Terminator. He's got to use it to prove he's tough and hard. The proper people in the underworld do carry guns. It's different when you're working. You're doing the job. It's controlled. Tony Tucker carried a shooter, but only for protection when he was busy on criminal activities. At the end of the day, it couldn't save him, could it? There is an army of guns out there if you want them. They are hidden away, buried or stashed, sitting there till somebody needs one. then destroyed or put back safely depending on whether they've been used or not, and might be carrying incriminating evidence. If they've been fired, they're best out of the way. I can get shooters from my connections at any time of the night or day, and I wouldn't hesitate to do so if anyone hurt my children or any of my family. Come and hurt me any time, but stay away from my family. That's personal, and that has a different code. The street has got its own law, its own politics. That's the way it rumbles. But drugs are changing a lot of that. With drugs go lunatics, loaded guns and no principles, no underworld codes, no honour amongst thieves. There is no doubt that drugs changed my life too. I started taking steroids to build my body up, to get these ripping biceps, that bulk neck, to be the toughest guy in clubland, bursting out of my dinner jacket and bow tie. I ended up becoming a monster. I was the Incredible Hulk who could turn from a nice guy to a raging maniac in seconds. Just one wrong word or my toast wasn't done right. Any small thing and I was off on one. From taking the mild steroid Anavar, I was getting hooked on stronger and stronger doses. I'd look in the mirror in the morning and see my muscles getting bigger and bigger, ripping with power like somebody out of Mr. Universe contest. I had a really bad car crash in the late 80s which laid me up for months. I needed to build myself up afterwards, and I started taking the heavy duty steroids, injecting testosterone and cestorin, anything I could get my hands on, oblivious to any damage, mental or physical, they might do. I'd always looked after myself, trained, played a lot of football, so it wasn't as if I was a 7-stone weakling trying to build myself up to beat the beach bullies. No, I wanted more than fit. I wanted big. I wanted people to say, wow, look at that geezer, he looks the business. But of course, the bigger you were, the tougher you looked, the more work kept rolling in. And yes, I've got to admit that vanity played a big part. Doormen are the vainest people in the world. You go on parade, and you need to look the part. I was Schwarzenegger, I was Stallone, and it's definitely a turn on for the women too. I've lost count the amount of times I got approached for sex when I was on the door. The downside of steroids is the terrible nauseousness, the paranoia, the short fuse, the terrifying rages. I would get involved in near psychopathic rage road incidences all the time. If somebody cut me up or did a wanker gesture, I'd go after them like a madman. I once ripped the door off a car to get to a bloke who cut me up on a roundabout. I chased him for 5 miles before I caught him. He was fucking petrified. Another geezer shouted something out his window out his motor and dagged him, so I pulled him across the next lights. He locked his doors from the inside, so I put my fist straight through the windscreen. Another time somebody had parked in my space outside the Paradise Club, so I got a few of the blokes out, all beefy sorts, and we each took a corner of the car and just bounced it down the road. As we were shunting it along, the owners came back. They stood open-mouthed as they watched us heaving it like a lump of plastic or something. I said, sorry mate, but you were illegally parked. He wasn't about to start an argument with 6 heavyweight bouncers over his parking rights. I know now that steroids are the most dangerous drugs I've ever taken in my life, and the damage and effects of my abuse will be with me till the day I die. I used to take steroids, 6 weeks on and 6 weeks off, but I found that over the 6 weeks off I wasn't injecting them, I would start to feel weakened. My body was craving for more and more. Sometimes I'd take more, even though I knew it could be dangerous medically. Because my body had become so big and strong, I constantly needed more food. I remember the first time it happened when we were shopping at Lakeside. My whole body started shaking, demanding food to satisfy the self-induced hunger. It was like shoveling coal onto a blazing fire. After that, I always carried screw-top jars of Heinz baby food around with me for a quick food fix. They contained all the nutrients and vitamins my body was crying out for. I'd take loads with me, all flavours, beef, ham, chicken, and guzzle them down 6 at a time, even when I was working. I know I wasn't the only baby food junkie either. I'd got a tip from a pal on steroids. He told me dozens of bodybuilders were whacking down baby food. It made sense to me, and helped because it was so quickly digested by the system. But it didn't do a lot of favours for my foul tempers. One day, Denny served me up a meal that was about the size of a child's dinner. I went berserk. I yelled at her, how the fuck am I supposed to live on that? I held the plate across the room and it smashed against the wall. I dragged the fridge out and turned it over. I smashed up the kitchen, causing hundreds of pounds worth of damage. And all for nothing. Just pointless rage. I picked up a baseball bat and was smashing myself over the head with it. My rage had reached such ferocity that I feared I would kill Denny if I didn't vent my anger on myself. Another time I picked up the settee and threw it across the room like it was a kid's toy. I'd lost control of the terrible violence inside of me. My family was suffering. I put them through hell. I put a gun to Denny's head. I'd held a knife to her throat. That's how bad it was. I was a walking time bomb and dangerous to be near. No wonder she eventually kicked me out. At that period in my life, with steroids as my master and vanity as my partner, I was probably the most selfish, horrible person you could ever meet. I was out there with my mates, 20-stone monsters with 20-inch biceps, and getting a buzz when people looked at us in absolute awe as we walked 15-handed into a club or pub. Back then, I was on an emotional helter-skelter, up and down, terrible mood swings, sleepless nights, 4-day nosebleeds, taking coke for the all-night doors, and feeling my blood pressure surging out of control till my head was almost bursting. In short, steroids have left my body fucked. With fantastic help from Kelly, who's only half my age but twice as strong, I'm clean of all illicit drugs now, but I still take pills for blood pressure. My liver is constantly monitored by the doctor. Most of my organs have been pushed beyond the limits, and I've probably shortened my life by 10 or 15 years. I could go back into training. I could go back onto steroids and get to 17 or 18 stone again and look brilliant, but inside, the doctors say, I'd have the organs of a 60-year-old man. The heart can only take so much. It's a muscle. When you take steroids, it grows and grows to keep pace with your physique. You end up having a heart attack, and when they do the post-mortem, they find out you've got the heart of an old man, and you've worn it out. I owe it to Kelly and my kids to stay clean, stay in control, and stay alive. The moment is still vivid in my memory of the day that I had passed the point of no return, giving up hope of ever getting my life straight. I'd had a big bust-up with Kelly after I dragged her out of a party and terrified the 200 guests so much that even the doormen had locked themselves in their car. Kelly is a really pretty redhead with a lovely slim figure and a great smile. I knew other men looked at her and fancied her. They probably wondered what the hell she was doing with a lump like me twice her age. I should have been proud that she was so attractive to the opposite sex, but that green-eyed monster had got the better of me, and all I felt was raging jealousy if another bloke looked at her. After the party busted up, Kelly didn't want to see me again. Nobody wanted to know me. I knew I'd gone too far this time. I'd become a wild animal people were too scared to go near. I got myself a gun, went to my mum and dad's home and sat in the box room, absolutely desolate. I sat for about an hour looking at my shooter on my lap, picked it up, put it to my mouth. I thought, fuck it, I'm fed up with the world. I'm 40 years of age, and what have I got? Nothing. I've had 4 serious long-term relationships, nice houses, 4 kids by different women, but what does all that mean now? I felt a lonely, broken man. I'd reckoned everybody looked at me as a low-life drunk, a no-hoper, and I might as well go and join my mates down the cemetery. I could see no other solution other than to pull the trigger. I cocked the gun, then a voice told me, "No, that's the coward's way out, Carlton." Suddenly, I was imagining the horror my parents would suffer if they came home and found me dead, my brain splashed all over the ceiling. The voice in my head was telling me, why not prove everybody wrong? Show them what you're made of. I knew Tony's dad, Roland, had died there and then, from shock at his home in Folkestone, Kent, when he was told about the Rettendon murders. He was only 63, no age these days for anybody to die. I couldn't bear the thought of that happening to my dad. He didn't deserve that. Neither did Mum. And what about my lovely kids? They couldn't have handled their dad topping himself. Not big tough dad who always came out with the money on birthday time. I looked at their pictures and said, no, this is not the way. I'd always been a fighter, and I'd fight my way back from this, for my family, if for nobody else. I knew I had to start again, drag myself up from the pits of despondency, make myself a better man. Nobody could help me but myself. It was time to boot out the self-pity. I picked myself up, threw the gun away, and headed for the doctor's surgery. His grim prognosis was everything I dreaded. Carry on with your present lifestyle, Mr. Leach, and you're going to die. No beating around the bush, you will die. Now I really needed help. I was put on a specialist course to dry me out, build me up, cleanse my body of the steroids, cleanse my mind of the depression and paranoia. It was many long months before I could see the light at the end of the tunnel and my end to the darkest days of my life.